In the Star Wars saga, Anakin Skywalker's early life as a slave on Tatooine defined much of his personality. His anger, fear of loss, and hunger for control. But what if he had grown up free, never knowing the chains of slavery? This alternate timeline shifts the course of his destiny, and possibly the fate of the galaxy itself. Anakin Skywalker was born free on the desert world of Tatooine. He lived with his mother, Shmi, in a small but warm home where the suns rose each morning across the endless dunes. They were not wealthy, but they were content, and Anakin grew up knowing kindness instead of chains. From an early age, Anakin showed gifts beyond imagination. He built small machines from scraps, repaired droids for neighbors, and even raced pod racers for sport. Without the burden of slavery, his heart was light, and his confidence grew stronger each year. When Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn visited Tatooine, he quickly noticed the boy's extraordinary talent. Instead of gambling for Anakin's freedom, Qui-Gon simply asked Shmi if her son might walk the Jedi path. With love and trust, she agreed, knowing Anakin would leave with hope, not fear. At the Jedi Temple, Anakin trained with focus and joy. He still carried the deep bond of love for his mother, but he no longer feared losing her. Free of anger and bitterness, his spirit remained calm, and the Jedi saw in him the promise of balance. Years later, during the crisis on Naboo, Anakin met Padme Amidala. Their friendship blossomed into love, not from desperation, but from respect and warmth. Anakin's heart was steady, and his love for her became a strength rather than a weakness. As the Clone Wars began, Anakin rose as a brilliant leader. His soldiers followed him with pride, for he fought not to prove himself but to protect the galaxy. Palpatine, watching closely, tried to whisper temptations into his ear, yet Anakin's heart was not weighed down by fear. The darkness found no place to take root. When a moment of choice arrived, Anakin stood against the shadow. He saw through Palpatine's lies and warned the Jedi before the trap could be sprung. Order 66 never came to pass, and the galaxy was spared from tyranny. Anakin Skywalker remained a Jedi, a guardian of peace and light. His life was not marked by chains, but by freedom, courage, and the love he carried from his childhood home beneath the twin suns of Tatooine. What if Anakin Skywalker was never a slave? On the desert world of Tatooine, Anakin Skywalker grew up free beside his mother, Shmi. They lived in a small home on the edge of Mos Espa, working hard but without chains or owners. Anakin spent his days repairing droids, racing pods across the dunes, and dreaming of the stars above. His laughter was bright, his spirit unbroken, and though life was simple, it was filled with freedom. When Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn arrived in Tatooine during a mission, he quickly noticed the boy's brilliance. Anakin was not a frightened child desperate for rescue. He was confident, bold, and eager to prove his skills. Shmi, though protective, agreed to let her son follow his destiny with the Jedi. This choice was made in peace, not in fear. At the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, Anakin trained under Obi-Wan Kenobi with a steadier heart. He struggled at times, but the scars of slavery did not haunt him. Instead of anger, he carried curiosity. Instead of fear, he carried hope. The Jedi Council saw his potential, and though he was headstrong, his spirit shone with light. Years later, during the Naboo crisis, Anakin met Padme Amidala. Their bond grew slowly, founded on trust rather than desperation. He admired her strength, and she saw his kindness. When the Clone Wars erupted, Anakin led his troops with brilliance and courage, not to prove his worth, but to protect those who could not fight. Chancellor Palpatine watched closely, but found fewer cracks in the young Jedi's heart. Without the pain of slavery or the fear of losing his mother, Anakin was harder to sway. His choices were guided not by obsession, but by love and duty. When the shadow of the Sith finally rose, Palpatine tried to tempt him with promises of power. But Anakin stood firm. His heart was not chained by fear, and his destiny was not bound by anger. With Obi-Wan by his side, he chose the light. The galaxy would still face war, but its brightest defender never fell. Anakin Skywalker remained free, not only in body, but in spirit. And because of that freedom, darkness never claimed him. Anakin Skywalker was born not into chains, but into freedom. His mother, Shmi Skywalker, raised him in a modest home on Tatooine. Life was not easy, but it was theirs to live. Anakin spent his days repairing droids, racing through the sands, and dreaming of the stars above. When Qui-Gon Jinn arrived on Tatooine with Padme Amidala and young Jar Jar Binks, he noticed the boy's incredible skill. Anakin greeted the Jedi not as a frightened slave, but as a confident child, eager to show his machines and his pod racing craft. Shmi, proud of her son, welcomed the visitors without fear of punishment, for no master held power over them. Qui-Gon soon sensed the truth. The Force was strong with Anakin, stronger than he had felt in many years. Yet this boy's eyes carried no anger, no shadow. Shmi listened as Qui-Gon spoke of the Jedi Order. She hesitated, but Anakin's heart longed for the stars. With love, she agreed, knowing she could visit him in freedom whenever fate allowed. At the Jedi Temple, Anakin grew with less burden. He missed his mother, yet he did not fear losing her. He trusted that their bond was safe. Under Obi-Wan Kenobi's guidance, he became a student who asked questions with patience instead of frustration. His power still burned bright, but it was shaped by calm resolve. Years later, in the midst of the Naboo crisis, Anakin met Padme again. He admired her courage, and she admired his honesty. Their friendship blossomed naturally, not hidden in desperation, but built on trust and laughter. When war spread across the galaxy, Anakin became a brilliant commander. His men followed him not only for his power, but because he believed in them. His heart stayed steady, even when faced with fear. Palpatine tried to whisper promises of greater strength, of forbidden ways to protect those he loved. But Anakin, no longer chained by fear or anger, saw through the lies. He chose loyalty to his friends, to Padme, and to the light of the Force. In this path, Anakin Skywalker never became Darth Vader. He remained the hero he was meant to be, bringing peace to the galaxy as a true guardian of hope. Anakin Skywalker was born free. On Tatooine, he and his mother, Shmi, lived in a small home near Mos Espa. They were not wealthy, but they were free, and that made every sunrise brighter. Shmi worked hard to keep food on the table, while Anakin spent his days building machines from scraps. His hands were always busy, and his imagination seemed endless. Without chains or an owner, Anakin grew with confidence. When he raced pods across the desert canyons, it was not for a master's profit, but for the thrill of speed and the joy of victory. The people of Mos Espa began to whisper about the gifted boy who could fly faster than the wind and repair engines no one else could fix. One fateful day, Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn passed through Tatooine. He felt the boy's presence before he even saw him. Anakin's connection to the Force was strong, steady, and unbroken by fear. Qui-Gon spoke with Shmi, and because Anakin was free, there was no gamble, no dice roll for his future. With her blessing, Anakin left to begin his training with the Jedi. In the temple, Anakin struggled at times with rules, but he was calmer than he might have been. He had not lived under cruelty. He had not been torn from his mother's side by force. His heart still longed for her, but that longing was not poisoned by guilt. His fellow students saw him as bold and gifted, and though he wrestled with pride, he also carried kindness. When he met Padme Amidala during the conflict on Naboo, their bond grew from friendship into love. This love was not desperate or fearful, but steady and hopeful. It gave Anakin strength instead of weakness. As the Clone Wars spread across the galaxy, Anakin led his troops with brilliance and courage. Palpatine whispered in his ear, but the words slid off like shadows in the sun. Anakin had no chains in his memory, no buried fear to twist into anger. In time, he stood not as Darth Vader, but as the Jedi Knight he was meant to be. The galaxy was spared a darker fate because the boy had never been a slave and the man had never been broken. Anakin Skywalker was born free on Tatooine, not in chains. His mother, Shmi, raised him in a small home near Mos Espa. Life was not easy, but it was their own. Anakin spent his childhood building droids, repairing speeders, and dreaming of the stars. He never knew the fear of being sold or the pain of belonging to someone else. When Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi arrived on Tatooine, they found not a desperate boy, but a confident, curious young genius. Anakin proudly showed them C-3PO, the droid he had built with his own hands. Qui-Gon sensed the boy's incredible power in the Force and spoke gently with Shmi. There was no gamble, no release from slavery. Shmi, though worried, gave her blessing. "Go, my son," she said. "Find your path among the stars." At the Jedi Temple, Anakin grew as a student with fewer scars. He struggled, as all children do, but he carried no anger from chains or cruel masters. Obi-Wan guided him firmly, and Anakin responded with respect. He still longed for adventure, still raced starfighters with daring moves, but he did not carry the same shadows in his heart. When he met Padme Amidala during the Naboo crisis, he spoke to her as an equal. Their bond grew naturally, built on kindness rather than fear of losing her. Padme admired his courage and compassion, and Anakin admired her wisdom. Palpatine, watching from the shadows, still whispered to the young Jedi. But Anakin's mind was stronger. The promises of power and control found less ground to take root. He cared deeply for his friends, but he did not let fear drive him. In the Clone Wars, Anakin was a brilliant commander, brave and loyal. Soldiers trusted him, and Jedi respected him. His heart was steady, not torn apart by secrets. He fought not for control, but for peace. The dark path that once led him to become Darth Vader never opened. Instead, he remained a Jedi, standing beside Obi-Wan and Padme. The galaxy faced war, but with Anakin's light unbroken, hope did not fall into darkness. The boy who was never a slave became the man who truly set the galaxy free. Anakin Skywalker grew up free on Tatooine, raised by his mother Shmi, who taught him kindness and patience. He spent his days building machines, fixing pod racers, and dreaming of the stars. When Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi discovered his gift with the Force, Shmi agreed to let him follow the Jedi path. He left home not with fear, but with pride in who he was. Years later, during the crisis on Naboo, Anakin met Padme Amidala. She was strong, brave, and far wiser than her years. Their first conversation was simple, yet filled with curiosity. Anakin, no longer a boy desperate for escape, spoke with confidence. "You are a queen," he said softly, looking at her with wonder. Padme smiled. "And you are a Jedi in training. It seems we both carry heavy paths." Instead of hiding his feelings, Anakin grew close to her in honest friendship. He would tell her stories of the twin sons of Tatooine, of the pod races he once loved, and of his dream to bring peace to the galaxy. Padme would listen with warmth, her laughter easing the weight of war and duty. Their bond did not grow from fear of loss, but from respect and trust. Anakin admired her courage, the way she spoke for her people, and her unshakable belief in justice. Padme admired his heart, his loyalty, and the light that seemed to shine within him. During the Clone Wars, when the galaxy trembled under the shadow of conflict, Anakin and Padme found rare moments of peace together. They walked through gardens on Naboo, watching the stars reflect on the water. One night, Padme whispered, "I fear for the galaxy, but when I look at you, I believe hope is still alive." Anakin held her hand. "Then I will fight to keep that hope alive, no matter the cost." Their love grew not in secrecy or desperation, but in open strength. With no chains of slavery haunting him, Anakin's heart was free, and his bond with Padme became the anchor that guided him toward light rather than darkness. What if Anakin Skywalker was never a slave? Anakin Skywalker grew up free, never knowing the heavy chains of slavery. He had a warm home with his mother, Shmi, and his spirit was filled with light. When Kagan Jinn found him, there was no desperate bargain for freedom. Shmi smiled and let her son follow his calling, proud of the boy she raised in peace. Years passed, and Anakin trained among the Jedi. He was bold, confident, and sometimes restless, but not broken inside. His heart carried fewer shadows, and though he still dreamed of greatness, he carried it with hope instead of fear. It was during these years that Chancellor Palpatine began to watch him. The Chancellor saw the boy's power and the fire in his soul. He spoke kindly to Anakin, offering advice, guiding words, and promises of importance. But Anakin was not the frightened child who longed for safety. He listened to Palpatine's words with respect, yet deep within, he felt something strange. When Palpatine whispered, "The Jedi are holding you back," Anakin did not grow angry. Instead, he thought of Obi-Wan, of the temple, of the calm mornings training with younglings, and he answered with quiet strength. "The Jedi have given me everything," Anakin said. "My freedom, my path, my future. I will not turn against them." Palpatine tried again and again. He spoke of power, of secrets hidden in the dark. He told tales of saving loved ones from death, weaving stories of strength beyond the Jedi code. Yet Anakin's heart was not chained by fear of losing his mother, for she lived safe and free on Tatooine. He loved Padme deeply, but that love was not twisted with desperation. So the Chancellor's whispers found no hold. They slid away like shadows at dawn. Anakin rose higher in the Jedi Order, admired by his friends, trusted by his masters. Palpatine, seeing his plans weaken, grew wary. He realized that without fear to command, the boy he sought to control would become the very light that could destroy him. And so the galaxy waited, as Anakin Skywalker stood tall, no longer a slave to any man, not even to the darkness. Anakin Skywalker grew into a Jedi Knight with a freedom that shaped his soul. He was no longer a boy who carried the scars of chains, but a man who understood what it meant to lead without fear. During the Clone Wars, he stood at the front lines, his lightsaber flashing like a beacon of hope. The soldiers who followed him did not see a reckless commander. They saw a leader who trusted them, who fought beside them as an equal. Obi-Wan Kenobi often watched with quiet pride. "He inspires them," Obi-Wan would say, "not with orders, but with his heart." In battle, Anakin remained calm where once he might have been reckless. When droids swarmed across the fields of Geonosis, Anakin directed his men with clear, steady words. He no longer fought to prove himself worthy. He fought because he believed in the Republic, in freedom, and in his friends. Captain Rex once said, "General Skywalker doesn't just tell us what to do. He makes us believe we can do it." Padme Amidala saw this change as well. When she met Anakin between campaigns, she saw not the frightened boy haunted by loss, but a man who carried strength without anger. Their love was quieter, deeper, and free of desperation. Even Chancellor Palpatine noticed the difference. He whispered temptations, spoke of power and destiny, but Anakin's answers were calm. "The Jedi are my family. I fight for them, and for peace." His words carried a confidence that Palpatine could not easily shake. The Jedi Council, once uncertain about the boy from Tatooine, now saw in him the promise of the Chosen One. Yoda observed in silence, sensing the balance within Anakin's spirit. The war raged on, but wherever Anakin went, hope followed. He was still bold, still fearless, but now his decisions were shaped by wisdom, not by anger. In the eyes of his soldiers, he was not just a general. He was the friend who would never abandon them. And in the heart of the galaxy, Anakin Skywalker was not a man running from shadows. He was a Jedi who stood in the light, unbroken and unafraid. Anakin Skywalker walked through the Jedi Temple in silence. The galaxy was at war, but his heart was steady. He remembered his mother's voice, kind and warm, telling him he was free to choose his own path. That memory gave him strength in moments of doubt. When Chancellor Palpatine invited him into his chambers, Anakin listened carefully. Palpatine spoke softly promising greater power, promising the ability to save lives that the Jedi could not. His words carried shadows. "You deserve more, Anakin," Palpatine whispered. "The Jedi hold you back. Join me, and together we will rule the galaxy." For a long moment, Anakin stared at him. In another life, filled with chains and fear, he might have listened. But this Anakin was not born from pain. He had grown with dignity, with love, and with freedom. "Rule the galaxy?" Anakin asked calmly. "That's not why I became a Jedi. You speak of control, but all I hear is fear. And fear does not guide me." Palpatine's eyes narrowed. He pressed harder, his voice turning sharper. "You could save Padme. You could save her from death itself." Anakin's breath caught, but he did not fall into despair. He thought of Padme's smile, her strength, her trust in him. Love was not possession. Love was freedom. He stepped back, the light of the Force clear around him. "You will not tempt me," Anakin said firmly. "If death must come, then it is part of the Force. But I will not betray who I am to stop it." Palpatine's mask of charm broke, his voice hissing with fury. "Then you are a fool." Anakin ignited his lightsaber. "No, Chancellor. I'm a Jedi. And today, your lies end." The duel began, not with rage, but with clarity. Anakin fought with purpose, not anger. The boy who had never known slavery carried no chains in his heart, and so the darkness could not claim him. In that moment, the galaxy's fate shifted. The Chosen One stood in the light, not as Darth Vader, but as Anakin Skywalker, free, unbroken, and true. What if Anakin Skywalker had never been a slave? Anakin was born on Tatooine, but instead of being owned by Watto, he grew up free with his mother, Shmi. Their home was small but warm, filled with laughter, and Anakin spent his days building machines and racing through the desert for fun. He was a boy who dreamed not of escape, but of the stars. One day, when Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn arrived on Tatooine, he found Anakin not in chains, but in a workshop. The boy showed him his droids, his pod racer, and his brilliant mind. Qui-Gon felt the Force flowing in him, stronger than any child he had ever met. This time, there was no need for bargaining or gambling. Shmi, proud and free, agreed to let her son join the Jedi, believing he was destined for greatness. At the Jedi Temple, Anakin's training was steady. He still held deep love for his mother, but without fear of losing her to slavery, his heart was calmer. The nightmares that once haunted him were softened, and his anger had no chains to feed upon. Obi-Wan Kenobi became not just his teacher, but his brother. Years later, when he met Padme Amidala, Anakin was confident, charming, and patient. Their bond grew naturally, not from secret desperation, but from true affection. He loved her without fear of possession. Chancellor Palpatine watched Anakin closely, but the boy he hoped to twist was stronger than whispers. Anakin listened, but he did not fall. His trust in Obi-Wan and the Jedi gave him balance, and his wisdom made him question Palpatine's hidden motives. Through the Clone Wars, Anakin led with brilliance. Soldiers followed him with faith, not fear. He was bold but not reckless, fierce but never consumed. His victories were many, but his greatest strength was compassion. When the time came for Palpatine to reveal his true face, Anakin stood tall. He refused the dark side, and with Obi-Wan and Yoda, he exposed the Sith before the Republic. The Jedi were not destroyed, the galaxy was not lost, and Anakin Skywalker became the guardian he was always meant to be. The boy who once might have been a slave became instead the man who saved the galaxy.